32 Chicago reporter Anthony Ponce is there.
Since then, we have seen a number of shop owners and citizens take protective stances. They're armed with sticks and bats and that kind of thing. We actually spoke to one of them.
When they come to our backyard, we got to take a stance. We can't let this be happening, man.
Cicero police have been confronting who they describe as outside agitators since about 4 p.m.
In Louisville, Kentucky, Monday night, riot police fired tear gas, scattering a protest crowd from a downtown area. Meantime, President Trump is threatening the nation's governors if they don't stop the violence, he will, and calls those instigating it domestic terrorists.
Those who threaten innocent life and property will be arrested, detained, and prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law. I want the organizers of this terror to be on notice that you will face severe criminal penalties and lengthy sentences in jail.
America's listening to Fox News.
As we stand up to coronavirus by standing back with social distancing, Bank Pacific reminds you that you can come to the bank without going to the bank. Use many of our other delivery platforms like online banking at bankpacific.com, accessing cash at our ATMs, shopping with our debit cards. For businesses, we have secure cash and check drop windows, and we are employing a new smarter mobile app with remote deposit capture in the next few weeks. We're all in this together, and together we will win. Bank Pacific. Brothers but branches, we place roots. Member FDIC.
Horizon Properties can empathize with individual property owners during this trying time. The last thing you should worry about is collecting rent or sending a repairman to your property. With their web-hosted property management system, Horizon can reach out to tenants, vendors, and owners alike and maintain the current prohibition requirements. Let Horizon Properties take care of it all. Help flatten the curve by remaining safe at home. Call 646-7616 or 777-7792 or visit HorizonPropertiesGuam.com. Horizon Properties, always there for you.
The county medical examiner in Minneapolis rules George Floyd's death as a homicide. This after attorneys for Floyd's family released the results of an independent autopsy report. It shows his death was due to asphyxiation, as was seen on the video when a white police officer knelt on Floyd's neck.
He had intent based on not the 1 minute, 2 minute, but over 8 minutes, almost 9 minutes.
Yeah.
He kept his knee in a man's neck that was begging and pleading for breath.
Attorney Benjamin Crump calling for the charges to be increased from third to first-degree murder. Only one former officer is charged at this time. Protests for a seventh day across the country from Los Angeles to Miami and in Buffalo, New York Monday night. A vehicle drove through a crowd, injuring a police officer and a state trooper. 2 people were also shot during the protest. Police have taken 3 people into custody. The U.S. Naval Academy is planning to have its 4,400 midshipmen return to its Annapolis, Maryland campus for the fall. Students completed their last semester with online learning from their homes due to the coronavirus. Iran says one of its scientists who was imprisoned in the U.S. is on his way back home after being freed by Washington. Homeland Security says U.S. tried to deport Sirius Asghari last year after his acquittal on charges of trying to steal sensitive trade secrets. After some reopening, doors are shutting again for some major retailers because of the mass protest.
Wall Street is still optimistic about reopening, though realizing it could take a little longer than expected because of civil unrest across the country. Businesses that have already been beaten down and closed because of the coronavirus now staying closed or closing again in some cases.
Fox's Jackie DeAngelis. I'm Carmen Roberts. This is Fox News.
Mezcla Chamorro Fusion Bistro in Hagaya and Tuman are now open for takeout and free delivery services in selected locations. For more information, call 479-2652 or 3 or 969-2652. Open Monday through Saturday from 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. and from 5 p.m. to 8 p.m. Mezcla Chamorro Fusion Bistro brings you island hospitality with the true taste of modern Chamorro cuisine at the comforts of your own home. They take your favorite local dishes and serve them with extra flair you will only find at Mezcla, a true taste of Guam.
Everyone has a busy schedule these days, and sometimes we forget to schedule our routine dental checkup and cleaning. Don't neglect your dental health. Schedule one today with Dr. Robert Yang and his Smile Team, conveniently located at the East West Business Center on Marine Drive, Upper Tumon. Call us today at 647-8702 or 3. Again, that's 647-8702 or 647-8703. We make smiles happen.
Hofady, this is Kayla from APL Guam. Here at APL, our expertise and extensive network can help you grow your business and reach out to more markets. As a responsible carrier, APL is also committed to a sustainable future, whether it's protecting the environment or investing our efforts in giving back to the community. Our dedicated team in Guam and the U.S. mainland are here to support you. Call 588-4651 or visit apl.com.
Talk Tales with Bob Klitzkie is brought to you by Bank Pacific. Banking on the Pacific for 65 years. Portions of the show also brought to you by Security Title, making sure you actually own the property you think you just bought.
Welcome to Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie, the only show on talk radio where common sense is a lot more common. Phone lines are now open at 888-TALK. That's 888-8255. And now, The Point proudly brings you Tall Tales with Senator Bob Klitzkie.
A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Every day, 1600, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. I'm going to keep saying that until the whole country understands it completely, especially those over there on the left who are constantly trying to grab the guns of people who are holding them legally and constitutionally. That's the kind of thing we talk about here on Tall Tales. I talk about here on Tall Tales. And the next thing I'm going to talk about is that feature of the program called Zemi Ikotni. And that's that part of the program where I usually rag on the Pacific Daily News for not running local editorials and oftentimes praise the Guam Daily Post for not only running Guam editorials, but running good Guam editorials, which is kind of the object of the drill. Today, the Daily News is running Special Mitch, a writer named Mitch Albom, Special USA Today. I'm going to pay more attention to that today than I am to the Daily News editorial, because I think it's time we talked about George Floyd. I think it's time that we talk about what happened to George Floyd and what's happening to our country right now and what's going on our island. So the Daily News, Mitch Albom has written a column that perhaps I may not thoroughly agree with, but I think it needs some discussion. Mitch says, we're already heading into a long, hot summer of death. Then we were already heading into a long, hot summer of death. Then a Minneapolis police officer put his knee on the neck of an unarmed black man and left it there until the man expired. And suddenly, a nation afraid to gather in the daylight began rushing en masse into the night. One life. History has shown that a single death can spark a revolution. In the case of George Floyd, however, a 46-year-old black man who had lost his job as a security guard because of layoffs in the Wuhan virus pandemic, it was more than just his death. It was the way he died. In front of our eyes on video everywhere, pleading for his life, that had angry people spilling into the streets of cities across this country. At a time when it's dangerous to gather, when it's still against the law in many states to gather, when our very health could be compromised if we gather, by a virus that has already taken more than 100,000 American souls, A single American life was bigger than all that. So people gathered from Minneapolis to Detroit to New York to Atlanta, from Los Angeles to Kansas City to Las Vegas and other cities. And yes, in some places, those gatherings turned violent. And in some places, there was shooting, and in some places, stores were burned and windows were smashed and merchandise was stolen. And while that is awful and wrong, to focus on it is to be howling at the wrong moon. Because this is about one life, but for black people in this country, it's never just one life. It's one life after another. These are some of the words George Floyd can be heard saying, pleading as he lay dying beneath the knee of a white police officer for nearly 9 minutes. I can't breathe. Please, the knee in my neck. My stomach hurts, my neck hurts, everything hurts. Mother, ask yourself if you could hear all that and be indifferent for all that time. To an unarmed man, to a man already in handcuffs, to a man whose suspected crime was not threatening anyone, not shooting anyone, not committing any violence against anyone, but possibly using a phony $20 bill at a convenience store. A phony $20 bill? And the man is dead? It's beyond comprehension, beyond explanation. But this is the pattern, the maddening pattern. Like so many of us who are not African American can empathize with but never truly absorb. Because death by police for black people in this country is too often over nothing. A $20 bill, someone selling illegal cigarettes, a cell phone or a bottle of pills assumed to be a gun. George Floyd is not the first black man to die from a white cop's indifference. He's not even the first to die from a chokehold. When something unforgivable happens over and over again, what are people to do? Where does the grief and anger go? You might have thought a common enemy, Wuhan virus, would pull us all together, make us sensitive to the fragility of life, lead us to treat one another with more compassion. Sometimes the leading edge of one person's life grabs as much attention as losing more than 100,000 others, because cruelty is more shocking than arbitrary death. The sad truth for black Americans is that there is often so little difference. Well, this guy, Mitch Albom, is a good writer. He's a columnist for a Detroit newspaper. He wrote a best-selling author called, Saturdays with Maury. So he's a pretty good wordsmith. And he makes some pretty compelling points here. I'm not going to spend much time with the Post title, Help for Wuhan Virus, Displaced Workers Arrives Finally. Would have made a good news story, not much of an editorial. So I'm going to go back to what the Daily News editorial picked up. This is what I've got on the card for today. I've got Troy versus Janela. Yeah, Tina versus Emergency. Troy versus Janela. We're up to 16 days now. It's been 16 days since Janela silenced any reporters. 16 days and counting. And it's been 11 days since Tina had to call the legislature into an emergency session to deal with a danger to the public health or safety, like she did on May the 20th. I don't think yesterday was the day to deal with danger to the public health and safety. It was a real sleeper. And then I've also got on the card here, Kehlani Rages versus Minneapolis, and that's where I'd like to start. Kehlani Rages versus Minneapolis. And this is a story that ran in the Post. Guam protesters, we stand together. It started as a small crowd of about 24. In less than half an hour and with very little advance notice, the Guam protesters had swelled to nearly 100, drawing people to a peaceful gathering in solidarity with the protests in the U.S. mainland sparked by the death of an African-American man, George Floyd, at the hands of the Minneapolis police officers on May 25. The protesters gathered at the ITC intersection in Tamuning in support of Black Lives Matter. In support of the Black Lives Matter movement Monday afternoon, while numerous drivers honked their vehicles. I expect they probably honked their horns. Have you ever honked your vehicle, Joe Cruz?
Never, sir.
Yeah, let me make a mark of that. And my horn works pretty good, but I don't think I've ever honked my vehicle. Yeah. Good thing this is not an editorial. This would cost them.
Yes, sir.
And then here's a quote from Kehlani Regis. You don't have to be black to care. Regis, one of the organizers for the protest, wore a mask that read, quote, I can't breathe. The final words spoken by Floyd before he died. Regis encouraged the public to join and get up and stand up for the lives of everyone across the nation. I was not expecting this to be this big. I thought it was just going to be a couple of people. I am overwhelmed of how much support we are showing for the black community. She is hoping to see an even larger group at the next protest to be held on Friday, 3 to 5 p.m. at the Chief Kipoa statue in Hargatnia. Christian Kititso held up a sign that said, you don't have to be black to be outraged. Kititso, visiting home on Guam from college in New York, said he had witnessed the first-hand injustices of law enforcement towards his friends who are African Americans. Kititso showed up to protest in support of his friends who faced discrimination from law enforcement in New York and Virginia. We've gone to parties that would be singled out automatically. They would be singled out automatically on the street. It just felt so unjust, and I felt so far away from them and what they're going through right now. Another quote, it just feels great to see that people out here can feel their pain from so far away. And here we are. It just feels great. Feels good. The numbers, I feel, are just going to get stronger here because Guam, we're a loving island and we love all. Bianca Cloud caught wind of the flyer an hour before the event had started, rushed out with her children to join the peaceful protest. We want to make sure that we're doing our part, she said. Bianca Cloud. What a nice name. Cloud held up a sign, "We got your back." We legitimately want to see change, she said. Change needs to happen now. As people, and then here's another quote from Artemia Paris. As people who are indigenous, we understand what it feels like to be oppressed. But we also understand that we will never understand the problems that black people go through. Paris came with a group that held banana leaves inscribed with messages that read, "Justice, and we stand together." I feel like the best thing to do is just get educated and try your best to get your family talking about issues like this. Come out and show your support when you can, she said. It's about understanding that black people in America have been oppressed for so many years, and it's enough, Annie Camacho said. As people who live thousands of miles away, Camacho said, it doesn't mean it's not affecting us. And then she went on to say it's about the whole system that's racially prejudiced, that's killing black people. And we have to support what's going on with all the efforts down there. So, you know, when I heard, how was it that I heard that there was a demonstration going on at the ITC yesterday? I heard it, I guess maybe a caller or maybe it was posted on Facebook or something. I was surprised, but then again, I wasn't surprised. And the reason I wasn't surprised is that we have become really tuned in to this whole idea of racial injustice here on the island. So I suppose that is an explanation of why, according to one account, there were like 80 or 100 people out at the demonstration yesterday. Another explanation is I don't know how old these people are, but it's not really that hard to get young people to come out and feel like they're making some demonstration for some kind of a cause. It's not that hard at all. Try and do it with old folks. That's a real challenge. If you can get a bunch of 60, 70, 80-year-olds out to demonstrate, you know there's real commitment there. So try to make sense out of this. There are black people living on Guam. There have been black people living on Guam for quite some time. And I'd have to say, I don't know. I don't see the kind of militants here. There's no Al Sharpton or Jesse Jackson here. We're fortunate in that regard. But it seems that if you're demonstrating now about something that happened in Minneapolis, you have to ask yourself, how much difference does that make to the people in Minneapolis? What do you think, Real Joe Cruz?
I'm not sure, sir.
Take a guess.
Either way, I'm not so sure.
Take a guess.
It's happening everywhere.
Yeah, but
yeah.
You know, we've seen the separatists do say some outrageous things, and you know there may be only a half dozen of them, but they're able to get some international press out of it. So they probably figure, well, we did our jobs. You know, when someone in East Jesus or West Timbuktu reads the newspaper, there's a pretty good sized
Guam group.
Yeah, that Guam group is pretty big. That group was separatists.
I don't think they even noticed, sir.
Don't notice
Guam.
Well, if it's in the newspaper, yeah.
Maybe.
Yeah. And once again, it's when a dog bites a man, nobody much cares, but when a man bites a dog, that's news. So for Kehlani Regis and her gang, I wonder what impact they think their demonstration at the where's it going to be, Chief Kapua statue on Friday is going to have on the people in Minneapolis or the people anywhere else. Obviously, it has an impact on them because you can tell from reading by the quotes, they feel pretty good about themselves. They're stepping forward, and they're fighting injustice right here on the island. But You know, I've done a fair amount of cruising around the internet to see what others think about what's going on. I read a fair number of conservative blogs and a handful of liberal blogs just to see what the other side is thinking. And I've got an interesting one here from Counterpunch, which is way, way, way over on the left. They would look at Marxists as too conservative. And this is what it says. The scene along Melrose Avenue, one of LA's most renowned shopping district, is now one of vengeance. Shards of glass litter the sidewalks. Storefronts are graffitied. The smell of smoke is still fresh in the early morning air. Here was the epicenter of looting that took place Saturday night, shortly before Mayor Eric Garcetti declared a citywide emergency and an 8 p.m. curfew. Garcetti later called on Governor Newsom to bring the National Guard, making the first time the Guard has roamed LA streets since 1992 when the Rodney King verdict was released. Today, military Humvees and troops protect what remains after the weekend's display of mass anger and hurt. The people who became known as the looters were a fraction of those who stayed behind after the early protests dispersed. They are now deemed thugs and thieves by those who find it easy to write off their palpable frustration, which read to Santa Monica and across Long Beach by Sunday evening. Writing it off, however, not only ignores America's systemic racism, but also neglects to eject our dire social stratification. As displayed this past weekend on the streets of LA, the upheaval taking place across the country is now as much about class as it is about racial injustice and police brutality. Now, this is coming from the left, so you have to have a grain of salt handy, but they're saying upheaval taking place across the country is now as much about class as it is about racial injustice and police brutality. And of course, since it's coming from the left, there has to be the obligatory Trump bashing. Trump, in his egotistical way, hoped for this outcome, stating he desired to be a wartime president. The flames Trump has fanned since taking office have sparked America's tinderbox, and the fire is burning on his doorstep. When in doubt, blame it on Trump. What we are now witnessing is a full-fledged class warfare. Now, do the folks down at the ITC building think they're engaged in full-fledged class warfare? I wonder how it would feel to them to know that the people are saying, you folks over there in the ITC corner, you are now engaged in full-fledged class warfare. No doubt it's been a perfect storm of events. The effects of the Wuhan virus, massive unemployment, some 40 million, the virus's death disparity, the continued assault of black lives by militarized police force, along with a corporatized government that intentionally fails to protect its most vulnerable cities. The looting of stores is inherently a class issue, whether you look upon it favorably or not. So if you identify then with this article here in Counterpunch that it is a class issue, then in order to support the class advocates, must you go out and loot also? Okay, going to take a short block, then I'm going to come back to another Joe, and then we're going to go back to Minneapolis for a while.
During this time of great uncertainty, Security Title is working to support our essential banks. We are working for the family who would have been homeless if their purchase was delayed, for the families refinancing to lower mortgage payments, for the contractor who has fronted the cost to build a home, and the surveyors, appraisers, inspectors, and the realtors who cannot make a living without selling a house. With our office doors locked and our essential team members complying with all government protocols, in our own small way, Security Title continues to serve our community.
The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts of Guam Training.
Hi, I'm Jerry Roberts, and every day on The Ray Gibson Show, I get to comment on the incredibly diverse, fun, challenging, sometimes frustrating, often exciting, but always interesting world of work. I hope you'll be there with us.
You can find daily transcripts of The Extra Point at guamtraining.com. Tune in every weekday morning at 7:20 for The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts, brought to you by Guahan Insurance Services and First Hawaiian Bank on 93.3 The Point.
Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie is brought to you by Horizon Properties. Call 646-7616 or 777-7792. You can also visit them at horizonpropertiesguam.com.
Now, more Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie. Spitting truth like watermelon seeds at a summer picnic. Call now, 888-TALK, 888-8255.
Okay, so here we are, back on Tall Tales, and I have the great pleasure to announce that I have not the real Joe Cruz, but another Joe on the line who is going to be speaking to our international radio listening audience. They're all waiting in avid contemplation, another Joe.
Hey, good, Bob. So if I was to guess, I'd say majority of the looters, it was an opportunity for them when they saw the initial protests turn into more of a mob scene with rioting and destruction. And then, of course, when there's enough destruction and you open up these retail businesses, then the looting starts. But I don't know what their age group would be. I'm just guessing they're probably mostly in their 20s, possibly some of them in their 30s. The ones that were rioting and looting. But the peaceful protesters, I don't think majority of them would be in those age groups, unless they're the communist or socialist types that you've been warning us about, and they're organizing. What is this, the Antifa people? Those are the people we have to be worried about. I don't know how far the president will get with classifying them as terrorists. But you definitely have to keep track of them. I mean, what did you call Pancho Villa when he crossed the border and from Mexico? I mean, it's definitely a group that they have to deal with.
When he crossed the border into the United States, he started out in Mexico, another Joe.
That's what I meant. Was when he crossed over from Mexico into the United States and they had to deal with him. What did you call him? Whatever you called him, he had to be dealt with, right? Because it was criminal activity. So, what is it? This is just my impression is this is a younger generation that they're stuck at home, and a lot of them, this was the opportunity to get out. And they want to blow off some steam, but it's just what we call mob rule. I mean, whether you be in the theater or in the someone who's a public speaker, the thing that people are concerned about, worried about, is that the crowd, if you're not careful, can take a characteristic or a life of its own. And you can't really predict the way the crowd's going to go, and you definitely don't want it to get violent. with these crowds that turn into rioters and looters, the law is you can have free speech, but you can't crowd fire in a crowded room. And I would think the intention is that you don't want to cause harm to people that will stampede and hurt each other, and or cause damage, whether it be to each other or to property. So I'm not sure how you'd word it, Uncle Bob, but that's along the lines that I think we're looking at is they're causing chaos in the crowds, and the becomes a mob activity, a mob. I don't know if you call it mob rule, but what do you think, Uncle Bob? Does that sound along the?
Well, I hear what you're saying, but I want to go back to something you said. There are protesters, and then there are people that see that the protest is getting a little out of control and see this as an opportunity to engage in looting. Isn't that what you said, Real Joe? I mean, another
So it
Joe?
seems that these Antifa people are along those that line of thought. The Antifa people are looking to create destructive situations. That's part of their strategy to get attention for their group. And because you take notice, you're like, wow, we can't ignore these people, and they don't want to be ignored. They want this attention, and they want to be seen as I don't know what you call it, a contender, or someone that would not be ignored. So it's almost like these copycat criminals that commit violent crimes. It's terrible, but it gets them attention. These the mass shootings. They would otherwise not have gotten this attention. It's terrible, but I don't know what other explanation you give. Does that sound about right, Uncle Bob?
Yeah, but you did say that there were people that went along with the demonstration until they had the opportunity to start looting, and that's what they did, right?
That seems to be an impression. Is that wrong? The wrong impression? What do you think?
No, I think so, but I just wanted to caution you that to say something like that is politically incorrect.
Oh, I know there's a lot of people. I've had a lot of experiences with people who tell me that. I mean, just they're so partisan that they say, "Oh, just watch CNN. Don't watch Fox News because it's not." I mean, going back to the '90s, I had people telling me that. I'm like, why? I'll watch them all, and I'll get information from all the sources I can, and then I'll make my own conclusions, my own decisions. But you have these demographics. You have these people who, and then they pressure you. It's like, okay, well, if you want to be with us or belong to us, you can't do this. You can't, because we don't do that. We don't watch CNN we don't watch Fox News or
And that's what political correctness is all about. If you don't say the political correct things, then you can't be a member of that particular club.
I'm sorry, and you brought something up, Uncle Bob, that I'm sorry to say this, but that's the kind of impression I got from this Mr. McNinch guy. He said some things that made me uneasy because, so does that mean I'm bad because I have so many impressions that, he said that Chamorros had, some of the thoughts or the things that opinions Chamorros had were bad, or I don't know what to think about it. Maybe you can clarify, but anyway, that's pretty much all I want to bring up, Bob, is it's that we need to be cautious and maybe try to have these young people know that these are not appropriate. This is not an appropriate way of conducting yourself, and this has happened before. It's nothing new, and this is why you don't do these things. And there's, they need to address the issues of first speech versus, this don't cry fire, don't create chaos in crowded areas and cause harm to others. I'm trying to be a positive, give a positive perspective to the younger generations, and all different ways of looking at it. But anyway, thanks for your time, Uncle Bob, and I'll listen to what you have to say about it.
All right, thank you very much, another Joe. Well, when it comes to young people, I go back to Mark Twain. Mark Twain said, "Youth is such a wonderful thing. It's a pity that it's wasted on the young." So I want to cover a range of opinions here, and obviously I have a point that I'm going to make at the appropriate time in the conversation. A couple of folks also want to make a point. I've got Maria Fagetgood, who says a lot of these protesters are mostly young adults that have been told that America is bad and they are entitled to everything free, and hard work is for older people. Yeah, I've heard that before. Tom Mendiola, our Tom. Whatever happened to our? I don't think you've been opening the Tom line. You've only been opening
all the lines are open, sir.
I think you've only been opening it for Tom Poole. You haven't been opening it. Sorry about that, Tom Mendiola. I'll take the real Joe Cruz to the woodshed on that one. But here's what Tom Mendiola says. If it was a black officer who put his knee on the neck of a white man and killed him, will the blacks demonstrate? I don't think so. I recalled an incident when 2 white officers were ambushed, shot, and killed while sitting in their patrol car drinking coffee. The blacks were silent. I believe that all life matters. Now, when this Black Lives Matter thing first came out, a couple people tried to say that when they were giving political speeches, and the Black Lives Matter gang came in and tried to silence them with a heckler's veto. And the speaker would say, well, yeah, Black Lives Matter, all lives matter. And they were run out of the hall. So one of the key words here, I think, is identity politics. But let me work with some of these publications here. Back to Counterpunch. Counterpunch says this is now class warfare. The looting of stores is inherently a class issue, whether you look upon it favorably or not. The act of looting is a long-standing American tradition. Now, this goes right back to Maria Fagetgood's point. The act of looting is a long-standing American tradition dating back to the theft of native lands and African enslavement. And today, while wealthy people don't loot strip malls, they are adept at looting natural resources and labor, from the coal fields of West Virginia to Jeff Bezos' Amazon warehouses. The poor, exerting their nominal power, even in a destructive and violent manner, display an entirely natural reaction to a continually powerless state of being. For them, looting is a cry for help, an expression of hopelessness. We've all seen the hideous videos. Minneapolis police officer Derek Chauvin murdered George Floyd in broad daylight. Floyd, suffocating, cried for his mother's help. We've all watched the callous white vigilantes, one an ex-detective, hunt down the jogger Ahmed Arbery in a pickup truck before killing him. We are all familiar with the long list of black men shot to death by cops at a staggering rate, 2.5 times greater than whites. We also know that 20% of the entire black population, even before the Wuhan virus, was living in severe poverty, some 9 million people. Conditions across the country are even worse today, and as a result, violence will continue to erupt. And then back to the top of the page, looting is inherently a class issue. Cornel West, let's see. Of course, both the seething acrimony among our country's poor and the brutality perpetuated on black people by government-sponsored gangsters predates the Trump administration. Cornel West pointed this out Friday night on Anderson Cooper 360, who was definitely not a black man. He's about as white as you can get. And this is what Cornel West said. You've got a neoliberal wing of the Democrat Party that is now in the driver's seat. and they really don't know what to do because all they want to do is show more black faces. Show more black faces. But oftentimes those black faces are losing legitimacy because the Black Lives Matter movement emerged under a black president, a black attorney general, and a black Homeland Security secretary. And they couldn't deliver. Well, that's really interesting, isn't it? You know, I have a, an autobiographical experience here that I'd like to relate. In 2008, I spent, I think, a month and a half in Cleveland, Ohio, a suburb of Cleveland, Ohio. I went back there to work full-time on John McCain's campaign as a volunteer. I didn't get paid. I did a lot of phone banking, driving people around, sweeping, swabbing, you name it, and worked really hard for McCain's campaign. But, of course, it was over. We didn't win. And it was over really quickly. At 9 o'clock, I was back in my hotel room watching the Barack Obama victory celebration. And, of course, I felt like I'd lost. I was a loser. I was depressed. But I consoled myself by saying, well, at least that's over. At least we won't have to worry about that anymore. You know what I'm saying, Real Joe Cruz?
Yes, sir, I do.
And I think everybody out there in our international radio's audience, listening audience, knows what I mean when I said to myself, well, at least that's over. But of course it wasn't over. It got worse. It got much worse during the time of Barack Obama. And another autobiographical experience here, I correspond with some folks who have chronic cases of Trump derangement syndrome. And of course, if you have Trump derangement syndrome, one of the things that you must do is virtue signal around anyone who is pro-Trump. That anyone who is pro-Trump doesn't get it, or even worse, does get it, and is really a bad, bad person. So my response to that kind of a rap is just to demur. And demur is a plea at common law which says, even if everything you say is true, you're not entitled to relief. Even if everything you say is true, so what? And my response is, if Trump is such as everything you say is, how did he ever get elected to be president of the United States? And of course the answer is the left. Compared to the left, Trump, with all of his faults, is a knight in shining armor. Okay, I've got Dan on the line. I'm going to take a short break and we'll come back to Dan, and then we're going to go back to the Twin Cities, Minneapolis, St. Paul.
Cocoa Coffee Company mugs are now here. Show pride for your island as you enjoy your delicious Circle K coffee. Each generously sized 16-ounce mug is etched with Guam-inspired images like Chief Godao, Serena, Two Lovers, and many more. The Cocoa Coffee Company mug collection is available for a limited time only, so don't miss out. Get yours today and collect them all. Exclusively available at Circle K locations. A portion of the proceeds go toward the Cocoa Bird Recovery Program.
Wow, nice smile. So perfect and all.
Thanks. I owe it all to Dr. Robert Yang and his Smile team. They do wonders for a healthy, happy mouth.
Got teeth? Don't wait until they hurt. Schedule your routine checkup and cleaning with Dr. Yang and his Smile team. Suite 119 in the East West Business Center, Upper Tumon. Call 647-8702 or 3.
The best thing that happened to teeth since toothpaste.
Dr. Yang and his Smile team.
They make smiles happen.
Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie is brought to you by Mezcla Chamorro Fusion Bistro. They are open in Hagåtña and Tumon and are ready for your dine-in experience. Necessary precautions and safety protocols were assessed in order to maintain a clean and sanitized area for you and your family while dining in. Join Mezcla in Hagåtña and Tumon, locations for a true taste of Guam.
So here we are again. We got about 10 more minutes till our big halftime show. And I'm going to give Dan a shot at jabbering with our international radio listening audience. Hello, Dan.
Hi, Bob. How are you?
Good.
I wanted to talk a little about, the protests and what's happening in the mainland.
Go for it.
The problem here, Bob, is just a lot of the left wing Antifa people, which are radical Democrats, mostly Bernie Sanders supporters, are instigating the violence there and the looting. Now, back to the problem, the problem that's going on back there, Bob, and even here in Guam, there's a culture here in law enforcement all around in the United States of misdeeds, criminal activity, and brutality. And it has to stop. And the only way it's going to stop, Bob, is if the Congress passes laws, the Senate passes laws that protect the citizens against these violent police officers. How many times do we have to go through this before the federal government makes laws that protect the citizens from brutality, from law enforcement? You cannot fight the law enforcement people. You're getting beat up. It don't matter what you did. You could have looked at them the wrong way or answered them the wrong. It's not their day, and you get beat up. It even happens here in Guam, Bob. And it's in the culture of law enforcement. Now, how they can stop this, Bob, is by making laws. Maybe one of the laws they need to make, they need to dismantle the internal affairs of all police agencies. And when people file complaints, it should be investigated by the federal government, by the FBI, or maybe they can make a new arm of the law that polices the police us. And maybe that can be a mechanism to stop this violence. Because people are fed up. I don't blame them, but they shouldn't be destroying people's property and looting. But I don't blame them for being angry at what happened, because it's happening day in and day out throughout the United States and its territories. Even here on Guam. Sometimes you get arrested for exercising your rights here on Guam. You answer back the cop, they arrest you. And it's not right. Over here, they really suppress your rights. If you argue with them, or if you try to exercise your rights here in Guam, you get arrested. Because they're not having none of it.
Okay, I get your point. Do you want to give me an example?
Let's say you get pulled over, and you don't agree with the officer, and you express yourself, that dismay that you didn't like it. Just because you express yourself and you're loud or whatever, you can get arrested for being loud, for expressing yourself, even if you're not committing any violence or you're not threatening anybody.
Have you had personal experience or?
I have many experiences, with officers. And sometimes, Bob, because it's a small island, sometimes it's a personal thing here in Guam. Because they don't like you, or they don't like your family, or their family, you're one of your family that owns a store or works at a certain place, have set the rules for one of their family, and then they didn't like it, and they complain to their relatives that are a police officer. It just goes to show, even with the mayor in Hagåtña, Bob, when he threatened that girl, and then the cop told that the Hagåtña mayor told the cop, and the cop went over there and threatened a girl. It's a good example. There's a lot of stuff that happened like that here in Guam. It's a small island. Or you talk to the guy's wife and the guy's a jealous guy. And they don't like you because the wife talked to you, or, you know, the wife works here and you have to go there to do business.
So your solution, Dan, is to have someone from the national government come in and monitor the police force?
My solution is that the federal government, yes, they need agents there, or they need to make some kind of new agency that monitors local police and state police. And when they see wrongdoing or whatnot, it's not going to be their friends that's going to be investigating them. It has to be outside agencies that investigate these kind of things. Now, that officer that killed that guy had 18 complaints against him. Not one of those 18 complaints were valid. 18 complaints, and not one of them was valid. Now he killed somebody. So that goes to tell you that a lot of those complaints, of those 18 past complaints, were valid. Why didn't they do anything about it? That's the real question. And we all know why. Because they're one big happy family. They call themselves a family. And even at that, Bob, I don't like it when police forces call themselves a family. They should call themselves an organization of professionals. You know? Not a family. Because they're not family.
So Dan, are you saying that as we're sitting here talking, that we have a problem with our own police force?
I'm 100% sure of it, because a lot of people file complaints. You don't see it. You know, we made a law, Bob. I don't know whether you were involved in that law, where they have to put up in the internet people that got filed a complaint against an officer, and they're supposed to put that thing up and tell what happened in the case. They're not doing it. They got a lot of people that files complaints, Bob, but it just falls on deaf ears. It doesn't go anywhere. You know it. I know it. Everybody here knows it. Probably even the real Joe Cruz knows it.
The real Joe Cruz knows a lot.
Yeah, he knows a lot. I'm pretty sure he knows. He knows both sides. You know, he's been around. He knows what happens. You know, even in our marshal service, it happens all around in law enforcement. It happens at DOC. A lot of people turning the other eye. Those people have been bringing drugs in for years. You know? Only now they got busted because too much drugs coming in. The cell phones went nowhere. They had those cell phones. What happened? They covered it up.
So do you think we need to bring somebody from the national government into our prisons too?
Yes, it needs to be monitored by a third party, is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Because they shouldn't be allowed. They shouldn't be allowed to police themselves when they're calling themselves a family. When they're got family ties and all kinds of ties after work, and you know, they work together for years and years and years, and they're not capable of doing the investigation because they got a bias.
This doesn't speak very loud for the separatist position, does it, Dan? That Guam should be an independent country divorced from the United States?
I like my United States citizenship. Don't get me wrong. You know, we want the best of both, Bob. Why is it, Bob, that everybody else around Guam got to vote for what they wanted and only Guam can't? How come Saipan can have a commonwealth and protect their culture and their lands, and we can't? It's a double standard. It's a double standard.
I gotta go. I'll pick that up after the halftime show. Okay, Dan?
But what do you think about what I'm saying about them policing themselves? The federal government needs to take a step.
I'll pick it up after. I'll pick it up
thank you.
after the halftime show, Dan.
The Point is KUSG, Hagåtña, Guam, 93.3 FM and 104.3 HD3.
Another curfew ignored. I'm Carmen Roberts, Fox News. A curfew for New York City went into effect at 11 p.m., but many protesters are ignoring it. Fox's Brian Yennis is covering the looting that's going on.
Curfew has come and gone. We are at the Macy's in Herald Square, and the looters even got here. And 6 o'clock, there were peaceful protests, legitimate peaceful protests at Washington Square Park. We saw NYPD Chief of Department Terrence Monahan kneel with protesters in a peaceful show of solidarity. This is not that. There has been criminality and riot groups all throughout Midtown Manhattan now for hours. And in fact, Mayor Bill de Blasio has just said that the curfew will be changed till 8 p.m. starting tomorrow.
President Trump mobilizes the U.S. military to end the unprecedented riots, and he has a message for governors.
If a city or state refuses to take the actions that are necessary to defend the life and property of their residents, then I will deploy the United States military and quickly solve the problem for them.
The president invoking a law from 1807 that allows him to send military forces into states to quell violence. A beefed-up law enforcement presence and National Guard troops are on the streets in a number of cities as Americans protest the killing of George Floyd, an unarmed black man, at the hands of a Minneapolis police officer. Terrence Floyd visited the spot where his brother died and called for people to stop the violence.
What are y'all doing? Y'all doing nothing, because that's not going to bring my brother back at all.
And the Dow ends modestly higher as Wall Street looks beyond civil unrest to hopes for economic recovery. The Dow rose 92 points. America's listening to Fox News.
Horizon Properties can empathize with individual property owners during this trying time. The last thing you should worry about is collecting rent or sending a repairman to your property. With their web-hosted property management system, Horizon can reach out to tenants, vendors, and owners alike and maintain the current prohibition requirements. Let Horizon Properties take care of it all. Help flatten the curve by remaining safe at home. Call 646-7616 or 777-7792 or visit horizonpropertiesguam.com. Horizon Properties, always there for you.
During this time of great uncertainty, Security Title is working to support our essential banks. We are working for the family who would have been homeless if their purchase was delayed, for the families refinancing to lower mortgage payments, for the contractor who has fronted the cost to build a home, and the surveyors, appraisers, inspectors, and the realtors who cannot make a living without selling a house. With our office doors locked and our essential team members complying with all government protocols, in our own small way, Security Title continues to serve our community.
Attorney General Bill Barr says Washington is looking into the death of George Floyd and issues a warning to anyone inciting violence.
It is a federal crime to cross state lines or to use interstate facilities to incite or participate in violent rioting.
Barr also announcing a civil rights investigation. We're told that investigation is in coordination with the FBI. This is to see if George Floyd had any civil rights that were violated.
Fox's David Spunt. In St. Louis, Missouri State Police said 4 officers were shot during ongoing clashes with protesters last night. Their injuries not life-threatening. In Buffalo, New York, a vehicle plowed through a group of police officers last night, injuring at least 2. They're in stable condition. Separately, 2 people were shot and are being treated for their injuries. In St. Louis, Missouri State Police said 4 officers were shot in ongoing clashes with protesters last night. Their injuries also not life-threatening. In South Philadelphia, residents and business owners are defending their properties.
And for blocks and blocks, people have come outside their homes, some of them armed with guns, some of them armed with baseball bats, and certainly in numbers, determined not to let any destruction come to their neighborhood. Now, they were particularly concerned, they tell me, about rumors they heard that their neighborhood had been targeted by Antifa. We had not heard anything like that from police.
Fox's Jackie Heinrich in South Philadelphia. More than 225 current and former global VIPs are urging the world's 20 major economic powers to hold an urgent meeting to agree to a $2.5 trillion plan to tackle the COVID-19 pandemic. I'm Carmen Roberts. This is Fox News.
Mezcla Chamorro Fusion Bistro in Hagåtña and Tumon are now open for takeout and free delivery services in selected locations. For more information, call 479-2652 or 3 or 969-2652. Open Monday through Saturday from 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. and from 5 p.m. to 8 p.m. Mezcla Chamorro Fusion Bistro brings you island hospitality with the true taste of modern Chamorro cuisine at the comforts of your own home. They take your favorite local dishes and serve them with extra flair you will only find at Mezcla, a true taste of Guam.
Everyone has a busy schedule these days, and sometimes we forget to schedule our routine dental checkup and cleaning. Don't neglect your dental health. Schedule one today with Dr. Robert Yang and his Smile Team, conveniently located at the East West Business Center on Marine Drive, Upper Tumon. Call us today at 647-8702 or 3. Again, that's 647-8702 or 647-8703. We make smiles happen.
Half a day. This is Michelle from APL Guam. Here at APL, our expertise and extensive network can help you grow your business and reach out to more markets. As a responsible carrier, APL is also committed to a sustainable future, whether it's protecting the environment or investing our efforts in giving back to the community. Our dedicated teams in Guam and on the U.S. mainland are here to support you. Call 588-4651 or visit apl.com.
Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie is brought to you by Bank Pacific, banking on the Pacific for 65 years.
So I'm back again here, Tall Tales, second half of Tall Tales, and I'm still working on this article from Counterpunch that says that the entire George Floyd issue is not just a race issue, it's also a class issue, and tells us that looting of stores is inherently a class issue. And that the act of looting is a long-standing American tradition dating back to the theft of native lands and African enslavement. This kind of goes back to what Maria Fagagood said about, Maria Fagagood. A lot of these protesters are mostly young adults who have been told that America is bad and they're entitled to everything free and work is for older people. So winding up this Counterpunch article, economic and racial oppression in America has finally reached the boiling point. Systemic change will take a systemic realignment of the economic and political structure of the United States. Now, listen to that. A systemic realignment of the economic and political structure in the United States. Well, what kind of economic and political structure do you suppose Counterpunch is talking about, Real Joe Cruz?
I have no idea, sir.
No idea.
Not even a bit.
It starts with an S.
Socialism.
Yeah. Systemic change will take a systemic realignment of the economic and political structure of the United States. Despair may be driving some of these acts from arson to the broken windows, yet is the underlying racial and class dynamics the consequence of being a conquered population that will continue to fuel the rebellion, a serious and extended uprising that no imposed curfew from a city mayor will be able to curtail for very long. And I got a feeling they're right, that this comes from the far left who practice identity politics as a means of bringing about that systemic change that this article is really all about. Yeah, it's a nice bait and switch, talks out something about George Floyd and wind up making a pitch for socialism. So here's the way identity politics works. Those who would have you believe in identity politics tell you that there are the oppressors and the oppressed. And all those who are part of the oppressed fit into one sort of identity or another, one community or another. Black, Hispanic, homosexual, transsexual, etc. All of these groups. And they're all being oppressed. And guess who the oppressor is in every single case? Can you guess that one, real Joe Cruz?
Governor Leon Guerrero?
Well, that's a local phenomenon, yeah. But for the identity politics guys, it's European civilization. If you wanted to depersonalize it, everything about European civilization is wrong. And of course, what are the emblems of European civilization? Well, white folks, the ones whose ancestors came from Europe, that are the oppressors. So if you are a member of any one of these identity groups, that's what you must understand, no matter what the issue is, no matter what the transaction is. So, even amongst the white folks, there are even degrees. The worst of all is the white male. And even worse than that is the white male Christian. This is why the left embraces Islam, even though everything about Islam is anti-female. And the left, says, well, we're the party of females, women's health issues and all that sort of thing. So once you get into the identity politics framework, you understand that there is no objective reality, that the facts in a particular situation don't count. No matter what the situation is, you must find out where the oppressors are located and where the oppressed are located. So in the George Floyd situation, even if you had an angel come down and say, George Floyd, I'm sorry, that Officer Chauvin is completely innocent, it wouldn't matter, because George Floyd was black and Officer Chauvin was white. That's all you really need to know. And that's all you really need to know to have nationwide demonstrations. And, of course, looting is just a political expression. It's not something to be condemned if you want to be politically correct. Okay, I got a couple other articles here. I got one from The Spectator. It says, this is the most sterile rebellion any country has ever seen. And it says, the Lego sets or Louis Vuitton bag you've always wanted can be yours free if you just wait for the next black suspect to die in police custody. That's the lesson so far from the riots in Minneapolis, Portland, Atlanta, and elsewhere following the death of George Floyd. Arson and luxury looting are not the most obvious ways of fighting racist or police brutality, but at this point, riots are a ritual. Antifa means bourgeois Bolshevism, college-educated mock revolutionaries performing to a predictable script. This is the most sterile rebellion any country has ever seen. Far from terrifying the establishment, it reflects exactly what is taught in schools and preached over the airways and in respectable op-eds. Academics and celebrities have taken to Twitter to assure these wonderful young louts that riots really do reform politics, and the civil rights movement was about violence from the beginning. Don't worry, you're saving black lives by throwing that brick through a window and lighting a liquor store on fire. You're just like the Boston Tea Party, only not racist. This is what significant portions of the opinion-forming classes in America actually believe. There is a spectrum, of course. Some thought leaders cavil more than others about the uncouthness of it all. But even the most delicate of pundits isn't as bothered by the firebombs and pillaging as he is by Donald Trump's next tweet. Now there's something really serious. Yeah, forget about the firebombs and the looting and burning police cars and burning police headquarters in Minneapolis. Donald Trump's tweets, that's the danger. That's real violence. There's no place for police in the world that enlightened liberals and their pyromaniac, kleptomaniac children envision. Police maintain order through force. But force is always bad except when it's used against authority. That's the most basic tenet of liberalism today. If we abolished police and made all of America more like Baltimore, our country would be more just and better. Yet there would be crime, but crime isn't unjust. It's just something you simply have to live with, or if necessary, die from. We should just try to avoid it the way we do Wuhan virus. Few liberals would say this out loud, though some of their Antifa offspring would. The only authority that modern left is comfortable acknowledging is reason, which by definition should not require the support of force. In practice, though, force may be necessary to destroy what remains of the irrational pre-liberal world. Once force has liquidated racism and other atavistic evils, reason should suffice to supply all the authority humanity needs. Police, unless they are strictly deployed against atavistic evil, are a denial of reason's sufficiency. You only need police if some people are basically bad. That is, if something in humanity does not answer to reason and must be met by force. Grant that, however, and the door is open to other kinds of non-rational authority. Religion, for example, and the pattern of human relationships that is most just won't be identical with the pattern that enlightened reason alone dictates. In concrete terms, property, public order, and even respect for police in itself are as important as any liberal concern about justice. While that certainly doesn't mean that injustice should be overlooked in cases of police brutality, for example, it does mean that rightful authority must be affirmed against looters and arsonists, no matter what they claim as their excuse. It means that police should not be presumed to be a menace to rational liberal harmony, because there is no such harmony. The Antifa hooligans who won't accept this until they learn it the hard way, but they are only a nuisance in the first place because of the moral sickness of our formative institutions, including the academy and the press. The radicalism the country needs isn't the petulant violence of Antifa, but an unyielding moral and intellectual critique of the institutions that malformed them. Don't literally burn the universities or storm CNN, but put the idea of what they have allowed themselves to become to the flame. Daniel McCarthy, pretty well done. Okay, I've got our Carl on the line. Good afternoon, our Carl.
Hey, good afternoon, Bob. We live in interesting times. there's a quote I saw from H.L. Mencken. It says, "The urge to save humanity is almost always a false face for the urge to rule it." And I think that's really what we see. I don't really think there's a true care for the poor in this leftist movement. And the proof is that everywhere it's happened, and I'll give one example, and that is communist China, which according to Professor E.L., I forgot his last name, but there's a professor that did long-term studies on these mass murder of excuse the dog, of people by their own country. And in the 20th century, 76 million, mostly poor Chinese, were killed by the communist Chinese. So there's really no real interest in the poor. It's more of a hatred of anyone who is rich that is the controlling motivation. I've made a hobby over the years of collecting stories of people who have overcome adversity, because I tend to get caught up in pity parties sometimes. And when I see stories of people who have been given kind of a raw deal by life, it kind of takes away my excuses. And one of my favorites is a short video I saw about a young man named Richie Parker. And the video it's not that long, it's like about 7 minutes, and it's titled, "How Do You Get Through Your Day?" And Richie Parker had 2 strikes against him when he was born. First of all, you know, as people said, supposedly we live in a racist society. So Richie Parker was born black. And his second strike against him, he was born with a physically challenged, as they would call it these days. He was born without arms. But Richie Parker was also lucky in that he was born with 2 parents. He was born into a 2-parent family. And Richie Parker drives his own car. He had it rigged up so that he could steer it with his feet. He works for a design company, a car design company. He maneuvers the mouse with his feet. The mouse is underneath his desk. It's really a remarkable story. But the thing I'd like to point out is the importance of the 2-parent family. And our favorite social philosopher and economist has pointed out, Thomas Sowell has pointed out that from the 40s through the 60s, black American families were over 70% 2-parent. And it was in the mid-60s that the Johnson administration started the Great Society programs, the expansion of the welfare state, and they incentivized things that were destructive to black families and white families and Hispanic families. They made it more rewarded by the government for fathers to abandon their families, and they rewarded families to have more and more children. More children, you get more public assistance. And you know, if a young black man grows up in a without 2 parents, if he has only a mother, if he doesn't have a positive male role model, he's going to find that. And usually that amounts to that he's going to find his surrogate family in the gangs, and he's going to find his surrogate male role models in the gang leaders, and that's what's happened, unfortunately, in the black community, and it's just devastated that community. And now, over 70% of black families are single parent, usually a young black woman trying to raise one or more children on her own. And there's no interest in addressing that root cause. And black leader after black leader has recognized that, including President Obama. He's come out and stated it openly. But there's really no interest in solving the root cause of that problem, which is unfortunate.
Interesting, Carl. So
yeah, I just find it frustrating that they're interested in looking at the symptoms of the problem, but there's no interest in fixing them. It's very sad.
Well, for the ultra left, the neo-Marxist and the cultural Marxist amongst us, there is no problem at all. There is an opportunity, and the opportunity depends on practicing identity politics. And if I were a conspiratorialist, I'd say that this nationwide round of demonstrations and looting has probably been pre-planned, just waiting for the right incident, like the George Floyd incident, to come along, so someone could say, okay, Plan 15, let's go with it. Because all of a sudden we had spontaneous demonstrations all over the country and spontaneous looting all over the country. And no one was concerned with the kind of stuff you're talking about, analyzing a situation and determining what may cause the problem and what the solutions are. The solution is, as I read it from that article in Counterpunch, the solution for those folks is very simple. Systemic change will take a systemic realignment of the economic and political structure of the United States. In other words, we got to go to socialism first, and from there we'll go to a completely Marxist orientation, and then we won't have these problems anymore.
Yeah, which is exactly backwards. So the government caused this problem, these social problems, by their policies in the mid-'60s and the expansion afterward. And so the solution is even more government. And black leader after black leader has recognized this. Kwesi Nkrumah has recognized it. President Obama has recognized it. Here's a quote from Denzel Washington. Don't blame the system for black incarceration. It starts at home. It starts at home. It starts with how you raise your children. If a young man doesn't have a father figure, he'll find a father figure. That's from Denzel Washington. And there's
I don't think that the Justice Brothers would buy that.
Yeah,
that'd be
that would make them irrelevant.
Sharpton and Jackson, yeah, irrelevant and broke.
Yeah,
okay, thanks a lot, Carl. So we got the seventh inning stretch coming up here, and then we're from Wrigley Field. We're going to La France.
All right.
The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts of Guam Training.
Hi, I'm Jerry Roberts, and every day on The Ray Gibson Show, I get to comment on the incredibly diverse, fun, challenging, sometimes frustrating, often exciting, but always interesting world of work. I hope you'll be there with us.
You can find daily transcripts of The Extra Point at GuamTraining.com. Tune in every weekday morning at 7:20 for The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts. Brought to you by Guahan Insurance Services and First Hawaiian Bank on 93.3 The Point.
Cocoa Coffee Company is now available at Circle K. Single origin coffee beans carefully sourced and locally roasted to give you the freshest cup of coffee Guam has to offer. Grab a cup that's brewed every 30 minutes or purchase a bag of the locally roasted whole beans. Flavors now serving: light medium roasted Ethiopia and medium dark roasted Jamaican Blue Mountain. Exclusively available at Circle K. With every Cocoa Coffee Company purchase, a portion of the proceeds will go towards the Cocoa Recovery Program.
Toll Hotels with Bob Klitzkie is brought to you by Horizon Properties. Call 646-7616 or 777-7792. You can also visit them at horizonpropertiesguam.com.
So here we are, seventh inning stretch, Wrigley Field, Chicago, and I take you now from Chicago straight to, I don't know, is it Paris or are you more comfortable in Barcelona, Frenchie?
Barcelona, yeah. Hot chocolate on the Ramblas, nothing better, huh?
Uh-huh.
So anyhow, I was driving in the first part of the show, so I was listening attentively while I was watching out for all the people that forgot how to drive in the last 2 months. And it's interesting. This past weekend, I spent quite a bit of time chatting with friends. You know, I lived in the Twin Cities for almost 18 years, and I worked there for 15 years, especially downtown Minneapolis. So I'm a little privy of a lot of things that other people might not know. But I was chatting with several friends and making sure first that they were okay, and getting their insight of what was going on. And it's very interesting, you know, when I first saw what was happening, you know, that Mayor Frey is a useless idiot. He never had a job before being elected as a mayor. He was always an activist like Barack Obama, never really did anything of any consequence. And, you know, they failed to recognize several things. Number one, Minnesota was still under lockdown from the Wuhan virus, and people's nerves were very frayed. Like we've seen here, and we live on an island with a lot more laid-back background. You can tell after a while people get a little irritable, let's put it this way. But as soon as this terrible incident happened, which was not surprising to me because I will give you a little more information about the Minneapolis Police Department. But what's interesting was that instead of quieting things down, the understanding that you know, he was sitting on a powder keg, the mayor just inflamed patience. And the first night of riot is you can lay it right in front of his feet because he was very irresponsible. He's just, you know, just put oil on the fire basically, and then was surprised of the reaction of people. And then after that, he armstrong his police department because he didn't want to escalate, which actually, you know, when you have a bunch of hoodlums facing you, the worst message you can send is that you are not going to confront them. Then they go totally berserk. So, you know, the Minneapolis Department is very interesting since the 1920s, which is basically 100 years ago, was used for the longest time as a private militia by the big companies in Minneapolis. Now, you're from the Midwest, and, you know, the Twin Cities is a very interesting place. St. Paul is the capital, is the political place, and then Minneapolis is the place where the money is, where all the mills used to be, and all those things where the money is being made. And St. Paul is fairly Catholic with Irish, French, and Bavarians, and those things. And you know, the jokes is the reason St. Paul streets are not straight is because he was designed by a drunk Irishman. So that shows you the tension that's always been between the different groups in Minnesota, and that's not even including, of course, the black population. The black population was fairly small until the late 90s, and then in the early 2000s, it grew radically by getting a lot of people from Illinois and Michigan who came because Minnesota are very liberal social programs that people were able to apply for. So you have not only a population, you have a very far left types of government, so they look at themselves as progressive, and at the same time you have a city that is one of the most segregated city in the United States. It's probably more segregated than some cities were in the South in the 60s. So you have big issues with this. And the police department, like it or not, has always had that policy of bashing head and ask question later that goes back 100 years ago until the early 2000s. And the early 2000s, the local politicians decided in order to change this, they had to bring diversity because it was mostly white Irish cops, right? And so they brought in diversity, but they didn't change the culture. So now you have Asian cops, Somalis, cops from all over, lesbians, you name it, you got it all, except the culture of bashing heads are not changed. And if you look a few months back, you had Somali cops that shot a white woman that was talking with a partner in their patrol car at point blank range and killed her. You know, now he got 12 years in prison. But there was no riot at the time, but there had to be a lot of pushback against the police department, the local DA, in order to bring charges against this guy. It took them 6 months to fire him. The union is very strong, but that's their job. You know, the union is representing their rank and file. The problem is that nobody in the last 20 years, even though they know there is a problem, has been willing to take the bull by the horn and change the culture of the Minneapolis Police Department. St. Paul, next door, did it with great results. They brought in a good chief.
Frenchie, you know why St. Paul is actually better than Minneapolis?
Go ahead.
Well, it's only about 20 miles from the Wisconsin border.
It's because it's closer to Wisconsin.
Yeah, closer to real people. Yeah. Go ahead.
Well, they're all, it's because they have more cheesehead, probably. Yeah, that's probably what happened.
For sure.
So, but it's very interesting. So, and I was talking to a friend who used to be a captain in the State Patrol, and he's now with the Minnesota Bureau of Investigation. And he was saying the first night with the disaster, it was kind of not organized, but there was a lot of the gangs from South Minneapolis, mostly Mexican and Central Americans, that took advantage of the opportunity to loot a lot of stores. The second, third, and fourth day, it was totally different. That's when you saw far-left groups, and he named two groups in particular. The Democrat Socialists of America, who represent about 600 hardcore leftists in Minneapolis, and the Workers of the World. Both of those groups are far-left grouped, and they ally themselves from time to time with Black Lives Matter and with Antifa. Now, Antifa is more of a national thing, but the thing that where you were right is that those far-left parties are there as an opportunity to bring down the system, to create enough disturbance that will last through the summer and all the way to elections, so that this is their plan. This is what they do. They are well organized. The police knows who they are. They are listening to their conversations. And when the governor said 80% of the people arrested, which they didn't arrest too many, they arrested only the most violent ones at the beginning, were from out of state. It bothers some people to hear that, but because they feel the governor is trying to switch the blame away from him from having been kind of lukewarm at the beginning in their reactions. So, and then after that, of course, it spread to the rest of the United States, and that's where I agree with you, where this is not happening in a vacuum at all. You know, it's different. Soros 3 weeks ago declared to one of the newspapers that it was time for a popular uprising. And this is the guy that, through his NGOs, pays a lot of those extreme far-left groups. So this is not happening in a vacuum. I think the president kind of denounced the Antifa. He probably has information about that. It sounds like the DOJ is going to go after them. So I don't know where we're going on that. But it was very interesting. I have another friend who is black, and his father used to work for me. Now he's in his 80s. So unfortunately lost his limousine service business because they burned down the garage and all the limousines inside. And those are African American people that worked hard all their lives and that saved every little penny in order to start their business by working in hotels and so on and doing menial job, and they were finally getting their head over the water and having a chance at the American dream, and now it's all up in smoke. So, you know, Dr. I think it's McNich, right? You pronounce it?
Yeah.
Yeah. Friday mentioned that, you know, he was surprised at some of his students' reaction that were very radical when he's trying to bring forward a different point of view. But it's not surprising because this is what Bevacqua and Underwood and all those people have been pushing for the last 20 years in their identity politics. And now we have BLM that has arrived on Guam. So we have an intersectional development here on Guam, which is kind of a side effect for what's happening on the mainland, which is very foreign to the Guam culture, but they keep on pushing it forward, and they are impressing a lot of young minds that are not quite yet developed, and for the most part have not been well educated. But they have been brainwashed, and then you have more and more incidents now where, you know, you see chamorros against FSM kids, you see all kind of ugly stuff like that, which you didn't see 20 years ago on Guam. You know, you saw some fisticuff once in a while, like you see in every society when you have strong males going around. But this is a very disconcerting series of events. I think basically you have a weaponization of injustice. It's like every time there is an injustice, you have people waiting in the shadows trying to get advantage from it. And then, of course, you have the criminal elements, which are always there, and they are opportunists by definition, and so it's a dangerous mix, especially like in Minnesota when the authorities refuse to enforce the law, which is one of their main duties, and they don't do it. And we've seen it here with our local attorney general refuse to even ask for a bail for people that have committed serious crimes. And we've seen it during the Wuhan virus crisis when we release people from prison that are dangerous criminals. So, you know, we have to keep on watching. We'll see. I see the president made some strong statement and announced that he was using the 1807 Sedition Act to bring the army and start taking the bull by the horn, but I think it's definitely necessary, unfortunately, because a lot of civil leaders and elected officials have not done their job, you know.
I got to agree with everything you said, Frenchie, as usual.
What's disturbing in Minnesota is that this Minneapolis department issue has been going on, like I said, for over 100 years, and that in the last 20 years, the local leaders in the minority groups have not really pushed the city council to do changes. So it's very interesting.
Yeah. Well.
Yeah. So I don't know. We're living dangerous times, and on top of it, we are at the time where we're going to go in a cold war with a very dangerous operators across the pond there. So.
Yeah, we need to get our stuff together, don't we, Frenchie?
Well, we need to be one nation, and right now we're a bunch of little groups, and you cannot fight a cold war if by tying your hands behind your back to start with,
And of course, the left doesn't want us to be one nation. They want the little groups, the identity politics. So something like this is candy for the left.
It's exactly what it is, and it's very disturbing. And I understand why some people get so frustrated, especially when they don't take the time to look slightly backward and see who is really manipulating who. But there is a lot of manipulation, there is a lot of money involved, and there is a lot of very nefarious operators trying to destroy this country.
True enough. Well, as usual, pleasure talking to you, Frenchie. Thanks for calling.
All right. Hurrah.
Okay.
Wow, nice smile. So perfect and all.
Thanks. I owe it all to Dr. Robert Yang and his smile team. They do wonders for a healthy, happy mouth.
Got teeth? Don't wait until they hurt. Schedule your routine checkup and cleaning with Dr. Yang and his smile team. Suite 119 in the East West Business Center, Upper Tumon. Call 647-8702 or 3.
The best thing that happened to teeth since toothpaste.
Dr. Yang and his smile team.
They make smiles happen.
During this time of great uncertainty, Security Title is working to support our essential banks. We are working for the family who would have been homeless if their purchase was delayed, for the families refinancing to lower mortgage payments, for the contractor who has fronted the cost to build a home, and the surveyors, appraisers, inspectors, and the realtors who cannot make a living without selling a house. With our office doors locked and our essential team members complying with all government protocols, in our own small way, Security Title continues to serve our community.
Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie is brought to you by Bank Pacific, banking on the Pacific for 65 years.
The home stretch from Churchill Downs in Louisville, Kentucky, as it burns, right back here to the heroic studios of The Point, where we've got about 10 more minutes of Tall Tales, and I'm wrapping up another exciting, educational, elucidating issue. I'm going to finish up here on what's going on with respect to identity politics nationwide and right here on the island. One of the things that I think is important to understand when you're talking identity politics is what Vladimir Ilyich Lenin is given credit for describing is useful idiots. Useful idiots is one of those terms where you know what each of the words means in isolation, but when you put them together, they have a different meaning. So useful idiots to Lenin were the people in the United States, the liberals in the United States, who would mouth communist propaganda, not understanding who they were helping in the process. In other words, the liberals were thinking, well, these communists said this and that, and I believe in that too, so I'm going to kind of side along with what they're saying, not understanding the foundation of what they were doing. So youthful idiots are people who will see some terms that they like, and they'll say, yeah, that's what those guys are for. I'm for that too, so I'm going to go along with that. Useful idiots. So, Jack, I'm going to get to you in just a second. I want to spend just a second here with, Ryan Trent. Ryan Trent says, hey, Bob, this is the first time I've ever wrote into you. With only protests and rioting and looting going on, makes me remember a saying that I've heard before. Strong men bring peaceful times. Peaceful times bring weak men. Weak men bring hard times. Hard times bring strong men. I'd be honored to hear your thoughts. Well, I hope I'm one of the strong men. That's my thought on that one, Ryan, but an interesting thought. So talking about useful idiots, I want to just go spend a minute here with Kehlani Regis versus Minneapolis, and go back through some of the quotes here in this article from the Post, talking about the well-planned spontaneous demonstration that was held yesterday, where numerous drivers honk their vehicles in support. Here's Kehlani Regis. You don't have to be black to care. And then Christian Kichiso, you don't have to be black to be outraged. And let's see. It just feels great to see that people out here can feel their pain from so far away, and here we are. The numbers, I feel, are just going to get stronger here because Guam, we're a very loving island and we love it all. Bianca Cloud, we want to make sure that we're doing our part. And then she had a sign that said, we've got your back. And then we legitimately want to see change. And here's a really good one. As people who are indigenous, we understand what it feels like to be oppressed. But we also understand that we will never understand the problems that black people go through. So I'm just, I have this niggling question here. How long will it be before the separatists hijack this movement, or at least infiltrate it? As people who are indigenous, we understand what it feels like to be oppressed, but we understand. That's Artemia Paris. Okay, well, I thought I was doing pretty well here today. I thought I knew what I was talking about from 1700 on, but I guess I'm going to find out that I don't know Jack.
Good afternoon, Bob.
Good afternoon, Jack.
Yeah. Well, long time discussion. You mentioned so many times the Frankfurter School of Thought, and not all of them were bad. One of the good ones was a guy named Erich Fromm. Do you remember him?
It sounds familiar. Go ahead.
Yeah, he wrote a book called Escape from Freedom, and you could get this PDF copy for free. And he came from the Frankfurter School, and as much emphasis is placed on this race thing, I think it's not. I think it's more the problem of freedom. And
you're talking now about Erich Fromm, the Frankfurt.
Well, no, I'm talking about this race.
Jack.
Oh.
Okay, are you talking about Erich Fromm, the Frankfurt School, or this incident that would happen in Minneapolis?
Well, much of your theory, your Marxist theory, you went back to the Frankfurter School of Thought and how this blossomed out of there, and how socialism began to take a new turn, and the response of socialism and Marxism. Socialism really is the economic arm of Marxism, and how it's working in today's society. What I'm just trying to say is that not all theorists that came out of the Frankfurter School were bad. And what I'm saying is that one of them that had a real positive influence, especially on me and my understanding of how society works, was a guy named Erich Fromm. And his main emphasis was that there is a problem in society that is the underlying motive of other problems such as economic and social and culture. And then one of them is, what do we do with freedom? And up to the point before the Wuhan virus and this breakout of riots, we're doing pretty well. And even though if you look at the things that were called racially divided, these were isolated incidents, mostly in inner cities, and yes, in some parts of the suburbs and stuff like that, but it wasn't to a point where, you could label the whole police force as being racist, that you could justify Colin Kaepernick taking a knee, and stuff like that. I mean, these are political views, but trying to connect the two, it was kind of hard. But this guy, Erich Fromm, he said the problem we have really is with freedom. And the thing is, he wrote this back in back in the 1940s, 42s and 43. I mean, and the book came out during the war, after World War I, World War II. The problem really is with freedom. And, you either become a cog of the wheel that turns this machinery, or, you break out of it. But the most difficult problem that we have, and I think the problem that we have right now, is what he writes as, quote, intellectual, technical, overmaturity, and emotional backwardness. And I think when we look at what does it take to operate your social media account, what does it take for you to go on your phone and be socially connected to people, half a globe away and feel their pain. So there seems to be that we're technically advanced, but we have not emotionally caught up to to that technical use of machinery and of technology. And that's basically what social media is. You don't need to be educated in using social media. You don't even have to have a right viewpoint. All you need to do is have popular viewpoints, and that'll carry the day. But I urge your listeners and for you, just pick up a copy. It's free, or you could pay for it on your book app. It's by Erich Fromm. It's just a pamphlet. It's just really short. He wasn't a great fan of social engineering, but he did understand the analysis behind it. And so I look at this and I see what's happening, and like I said, it seems like it's well organized. Organized by who? They're running on emotions.
Well, if I were to hypothesize, I would say that groups like Antifa and Black Lives Matter and groups of a similar strike that are over there in the identity politics side of neo-Marxism probably would be the ones to look for.
And here's another thing. Antifa closely resembles, the Nazi movement. They're the way they do things, the way they don't let other opinions come into the public square, the way they destroy businesses and stuff like that. From the other end, I was in California when Rodney King happened and the verdict, and when O.J. Simpson happened, and it was quite, there were riots, and I worked with people that were in the Watts riot, and they say, yeah, this is totally different, man. I mean, it seems like it's well organized, like you said, and it seems like, there's a push.
Gotta go, Jack.
All right.
The Point is KUSG, Hagåtña, Guam.